daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
It's actually Purple Access time. That means Judd. That means Declan and Chip Scoggin, Star Tribune sports columnist. Once my compadre on the beat for the Vikings for the Star Tribune. And now a guy who churns out just award-winning story after award-winning story. Chip Scoggins, congratulations.
Thank you.
Some great work in the past year.
Thank you.
But you're not here to talk about that.
No.
What?
You know, I spoke to a college class today, and
Wow.
you may break out into a cold sweat here, but they asked me about covering Brett Favre in 2009 and the lead up to what that was like. I said, I don't think Judd and I had a day off that spring or summer with the Favre watch, I guess we'll call it.
Oh, we didn't. Or if we did, we did shifts like firefighters.
Yeah, that's right.
It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. I just hope these college kids say, "Where's Mr. Zolgad? Why don't we ever hear from Mr. Zolgad?"
You're big with the college kids on TikTok. I know
The
that.
college kids love me, man. Big T Swift fan. I was just talking to Dex about T Swift.
Oh my God.
The college kids way into the Zolgadian stuff. All right, so let's start with this though. Let's start by talking Vikings and Combine. And there have been certainly some cliches spewed during the course of the week, but there have also been some things where, the Combine is a time where I think to a large degree when it comes to what's approaching with the new league year in mid-March, we start to try to read between the lines of stuff. What is your takeaway so far on all the Cousins stuff? It sounds like it's sort of being thrown out vaguely, but you could put some of the pieces together. It sounds like the Vikings don't want to do a long-term extension. The Kirk might like to sign a final contract here. The Vikings, it's unclear. It seems like they probably want to let this thing play out. Kirk wants more security. So just knowing what we have seen so far, what's your personal opinion of where this stands?
Yeah, I think you said the right word, vague, because they probably don't know how this is going to go yet, right? I mean, they might have their druthers and what they want in terms of timing for the end of his time here, but and Kurt might be on a different page. I mean, I could see him wanting to say, you know what, I want this to be my last team. I want another bite of the apple. I want another guaranteed contract for 3-4 years to take me into retirement. So until they really dig in, I think it's wise for Kwesi and him not to lock himself into any scenario publicly. And I think that's what we saw. That they're not going to be committed to anything right now, at least what they share with us, and maybe even privately with reporters. I know, was it Tommy P. Pelissero that said, don't look for a 1-year extension?
Yeah.
That's not, which I thought would be the likely scenario.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
From a team perspective, now I can see why Cousins I want a little bit longer than that. I'm not ready because I don't know, if he's at that stage, he'd be what, 36, 37-ish, 36?
Mm-hmm.
Does he want to go start with a new team there at that age? Probably not, right? So, but I think it's kind of a delicate dance right now, right? Not one to upset either side, kind of letting this play out. But at some point, they're going to have to dig in and figure out, okay, this is the way we're going. This is what it's going to be, and it might be challenging.
Yeah,
because there has to be a succession plan here, whether it's this year, 2 years, or 4 years. They have to figure out, this is what we're committing to. This is how we're going to do it, and we're going to stick by our guns and what we want to do here.
This is what I'm curious about. Is this a delicate dance right now, or is this a dance that the decision internally from the Viking standpoint has sort of been made? Because especially Kwesi's comments, both at the podium at the Combine and then in the side session that Kwesi did on Tuesday and then O'Connell did Wednesday with the beat reporters, Kwesi's comments seem to indicate, at least loosely, that a decision might have been made sort of about how they're going to proceed. And look, you know what? I mean, to your point, Chip, whether you like Kirk or not, they need to have a plan. They need a plan in place. And I'll go back to what I continue to say, which is this: Justin Jefferson's going to get a contract extension, and in 2 years, that sucker is going to kick in, and it's going to be massive. And so they can't just do this dance of, well, we'll guarantee this, and then we'll guarantee that. I mean, they're going to have a very clear vision of where their guaranteed cash is headed in 2025.
And that's the point I've always come back to is, how can you have Cousins on a contract that's where he is now?
Right.
Representative of his, place or stature amongst quarterbacks, and a record-breaking contract for Justin Jefferson.
Right.
And still plug holes on your team. I don't know that that's doable. I don't think it's feasible, right?
No, it's not. And what you can do.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying the timing of it. It almost feels like one has to come off, one goes on. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've always felt like I don't know that they want to. I don't know that it makes sense to have a lame duck year with your quarterback and just say, okay, write it out, and next year you've got to nail it. That's why I think you give yourself 2 years if it works to find your guy. Give yourself some a little bit longer runway with what you're going to do here. But I just don't know if you commit to another, 4-year term with Cousins, how the money's going to match up.
Yeah, and I think that the internal feeling is that, they might say, yeah, you know what, let's do one more extension through 24. But if the Cousins camp comes back and says, no, it needs to be a multi-year extension, then I think the Vikings are going to say, well, then 23 is it. So I don't think the Vikings are going to go down that path. And then the only question becomes, and we have no evidence of this yet, but the only question becomes, does the Cousins camp broach trying to get out now as opposed to in a year? I don't think that they will, but I do think it will be interesting if he has to play out the contract.
Yeah, well, that would be very interesting because, for obvious number of reasons. But, yeah, I mean, from his perspective, clearly you can think what he wants to do, but Quay's got to put a team together, not just this year. Right. And he has made it perfectly clear with his comments down there that when you're involving Justin Jefferson in the personnel decisions, which we've seen that before, but with a wide receiver, that was interesting, but that tells you the priority they're placing on Justin Jefferson being here and having a say in things. So it would be, there might be a little bit of a stare down here coming between the quarterback's camp and management.
I feel like to a large degree it has started. Now it might get more intense, but I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's pretty apparent there have been preliminary conversations between Kirk's reps and the Vikings, which I would guess are continuing at some point or have continued this week at the Combine. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair way to put it. And look, you know what? If he has to play one more year and then walk, I'm fine with that. I'm just curious because the Vikings have always, what's the word I'm looking for, capitulated to what he wanted previously.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that's going to be accepted when they say, you know what, this time, and Kwesi said this. He basically said Kirk's camp and the Vikings might have different views on things. So how is that processed when up until now Kirk has always gotten the extensions, the guarantees? The Vikings have done everything to make Kirk happy. This would clearly be the first time that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I don't think he would rock the boat, publicly.
Correct.
He would probably be typical Kirk and be matter of fact about it or whatever. But you got to imagine that it would bug him and that it would, not getting the security that he would want or the term that he'd want.
Right.
I'm sure it wouldn't sit well with him, but I don't know from like a performance standpoint, would it really matter? I don't know. I mean, is he going to be more motivated, to try to, get a big? I think that would be a storyline. I don't know if that's really, in reality, if players are thinking about that, so much. But I think it'd be interesting from the Vikings standpoint because then, hey man, you're on the clock for what you're doing with your quarterback spot, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Now you're under the gun to have. That would be interesting because you would have to identify in the draft and figure out a way that you're going to go get that quarterback, the next spring. So it'd be the urgency would get ramped up to level 10.
Yes. And it needs to be. That's the thing about this is they are, Kwesi and Kevin are here to find a quarterback. Like that's
Correct.
why, like if we were to sit down and drop a list of why they were brought here, it revolves around that. And so, and yes, to be clear, I think if Cousins is told to play out the contract, he causes zero problems. I'd be curious to see his performance, but I mean, I don't expect him to be a problem at all. I think he'd be professional. I think he'd probably play fine. But yeah, it would put the Vikings in a very interesting predicament because I really think, the day that especially Kevin O'Connell leaves here, if he resigns at 62 or gets fired at 39, I think that the lead to the story is going to be, did he find the quarterback? So like, this is huge. You're not wrong.
Well, and that's, that question has hung over this franchise for how many generations?
Yeah.
When are they going to find their franchise quarterback? Right. And that I agree that I'm sure that was a big part of the conversation during the interview process with both Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell is like, these are the guys that's going to be able to get it done. They're going to be able to, identify. This is Kevin O'Connell's expertise, right? This is what he's, wasn't the only reason, but I guarantee you that was a big part of the conversation with the Wilfs and anybody who was part of the interview process. So yeah, I mean, and I'm sure, this didn't just walk up on him in March and be like, oh, we need a succession plan at quarterback. I mean, they clearly been thinking about this since the moment they walked in. Like, how are we going to, there is an expiration date on Cousins here, and it's either going to be sooner or it's going to be, a little bit later. But we're going to have a plan here, and so it would. At what point do you think it gets really urgent in terms of the Cousins? I mean, what's the date they have to have a decision on him?
Well, I mean, I think that date might pass. I think if the Cousins camp is stuck on a multi-year contract, that it's done. That 2023 will probably be it, short of a Super Bowl championship or something like that.
Sure.
So I think the more important thing is what's the process that you brought up to finding the replacement? Is it the 24 draft? Is it a trade for a young QB? Is it? I mean, I would highly doubt.
Don't say bridge. Don't say bridge.
No, I'm saying like a young QB that they identify. For instance, if the 49ers decide, you know what, we need a veteran guy, and that guy might be Kirk, but if they decide we need a veteran guy and we just think that we did not make the right move on Trey Lance, I've heard the Vikings like Trey Lance still. So like, would Kevin say, hell yeah, give me Trey Lance. I can work with him. He's a local kid too. So I think the Cousins expiration date as currently constructed is stamped as 2023 unless he changes that.
Yeah.
I am just so interested in what the process is going to be because again, unlike with Spielman and certainly Zimmer, this is why you are here.
How much is the salary cap, like an extension, lowering the cap number, helping you there, entice you at all? To solve some of the problems you have.
It entices me through 24. 25, I think it's over.
Yeah, to me, I've said along 2 more years.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
24. Yeah, I am too. To me, that's the most reasonable compromise for everybody. I just don't see them committing to Cousins 4 more years or 3 more years.
I don't think you can, Chip.
No,
I don't think you can.
Financially, I don't. And on the field, he's been good.
Right.
But I think, you know, they have to look at it and say, you know, and I know the comeback is the defense has been terrible. That's the reason they're not, you know, a true, and that is true. But I just don't know that he's at the level or can perform at that level that you're hoping that you can get from that position. So 2 more years, I think it would be the best compromise for both. But I don't know if they're going to be able to find common ground there, Judd.
I think it's fair to say that Cousins' status is vague right now. The guy whose status is not vague is Justin Jefferson, Chip Scoggins. So the combine, to me, I think the most interesting thing, the most interesting piece of information that we can actually get our hands around completely, right, is the comments that O'Connell and Kwesi have made. And I want to go through 2 in particular about Jefferson, because the amount of empowerment here is so interesting. O'Connell said, quote, "I think him and I have really just scratched the surface of where we want to go as an offense, and particularly with him as our premier receiver." Kwesi said to the press conference in Indianapolis a couple days ago, "I don't want to be the Vikings GM without this guy on our team." Then in the side sessions, paraphrasing, basically said, "Justin Jefferson will be kept in conversations about roster building." Chip, I mean, to me, one is you said this. This is so unusual for this position to be empowered like that. But furthermore, and this is why I think Kirk's gone, these guys are about to negotiate a contract with CAA Sports, Creative Arts Agency, who drive a hard bargain in every sport. They just gave CAA as much ammunition, and I'm not saying that they need the help, but they literally are saying, bring it on. We're going to pay it. Bring it on.
Yeah.
And O'Connell, in my opinion, and Kwesi are both not saying this guy's going to be a pivotal part to what we do on the field. They're saying off as well. Yeah. And I think O'Connell, big picture, in his quote, is talking about Jefferson like an assistant coach.
Well, we hear this often with superstars in like maybe basketball, maybe a quarterback, maybe Tom Brady. I think that he had some. I don't know that I've ever heard it for a non-quarterback or, you know, it does speak to, and we talked about last week, like there is not a more important player on your roster than Justin Jefferson, right? So you ask him, like, is it going to get contentious with this? No, doesn't sound like it. If they're telling the guy,
well, I said it was part of. Yeah, this is incredible.
CAA might have said, yeah, add a couple more million to that guaranteed. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly going to have the highest paid. He's going to be the highest paid wide receiver in league history. I would love to know how much real conversation they have with him in terms of, is it just kind of casual, or is it like, you know, what should we be doing, you know, quarterback wise?
Yes. I think you just hit it. I think Justin Jefferson, because how many people have said, well, if Kirk's gone, how's Jefferson going to feel? He's going to be upset. Chip, I think they're saying, without saying it, I think they are clearly saying Justin Jefferson is going to be involved, at least, in deciding who is going to be throwing him the football after Kirk Cousins.
Well, that's the way I led to believe, because it's like, do you really think they're going to ask him about a 3 technique? Right. I mean, they're going to ask him, you know, direction about quarterback, like what, you know, philosophically, like, you want a mobile quarterback? What, you know, should we, what are the kind of wide receivers do you think we should be pairing you with? Even this, it just feels so strange talking about, like, because the NFL is, you know, traditionally managers manage, coaches coach, players play. You don't cross those lines. And it's like, here you have manager and coach saying, yeah, our best player, we're going to involve him in conversations about roster building. I mean, it's just so unusual, you know, and I think it's probably pretty wise, because Jefferson is so different than any player that Adrian was different. right? Adrian was a superstar, and he was an MVP. So I don't want to say he's the most unique player, the most special player that I've seen in that uniform that I've covered. I didn't cover the first version of Moss, obviously, but in my time, he might be the most important player that organization has had.
I think the difference between Moss, Peterson, and Jefferson, and just to be very clear, I don't know Jefferson personally at all. Like I cover him. I've certainly gone to press conference, but I don't know him at all. But just my impression, because I didn't really know Moss well or
And we
AP
don't know
well.
we're
right.
right
We don't know them
time.
as people.
Yeah.
But all of that being said, and I told Phil and Dex this as well. Justin Jefferson has done nothing, and he turns 24 in June, so he is a kid.
Yeah.
He has done nothing that I have heard about, seen on the field, in the locker room, quoted, that leads me to believe he can't handle this. I mean, Randy Moss was unbelievable. He was also incredibly immature. Adrian, as we've, had issues. So, until I find out, and I think I think that this also goes for KOC and Kwesi, until they find out that Justin can't handle what they're throwing him off the field as well, that there's a trust here because they are talking about him as a partner.
Well, and that's the other thing. It's like, I don't know that previous GMs would have taken this approach too, Judd. It says a lot about the players, but I don't know that Rick Spielman's going to say, Justin Jefferson is going to be part of our conversations. I think it speaks more to how Kwesi operates and how collaboration and alignment and all that. But it's still, you're not going to do this with maybe any other player that they have in their time, right? He's just that uniquely. They talk about his competitiveness and his singular focus on winning and doesn't really care about stats and all that. And so that empowerment, I'm sure if you're Jefferson, it speaks, volumes about it. And they're going to do everything they can to keep him, to make sure he does, stay here and stay happy and stay productive. And so I'm guessing the quarterback probably has that quarterback decision they have coming is probably a big part of that.
Yeah, and I also think that they're talking about, at least alluding to, that he will have probably a say in who the eventual second receiver is going to be as well. Because, that's where... So when O'Connell says his quote about that they have... That I think him and I have really just scratched the surface of where we want to go as an offense. I don't think that has to do with Jefferson's production. I think it has a little bit to do with that. I think it has more to do, though, with where they're going to go schematically. And if they get a guy that can take the top off a defense, watch out.
Well, to me, that with Kevin saying that, I think that's more about, like, philosophically, like, how do we surround you with the pieces that are going to keep making you an MVP candidate, right? Receiver, running the ball, probably route concepts, just all of it. So I think you're right on that has as much to do about, you have this unique talent. How do you keep building around him, and what does he think the offense needs to maximize him and the offense? And maybe some old school people might like roll their eyes at this. I think it's smart, Judd. I do. I don't have a problem with this. I really don't.
If you think the player can handle it, absolutely right. Like if this was an immature guy, right? And you're like, we're going to involve him. You'd be like, I don't know if that's going to work. But when Kwesi talks about the fact that when he got the job, or shortly after he got the Vikings job, and he sees Jefferson, and my guess is Tyreek Hill had just gotten his contract, and Kwesi says, you're going to get yours or something. And Jefferson looks, completely not joking, says, I want to win. That's the type of thing where if I'm an executive, I'm like, okay, that guy gets it. And I give credit. I think where you're right is this. The old school executive just painted all players with a broad brush. They might like them more, but they weren't going to involve them. Justin Jefferson, for his own involvement and feeling part of the process, I'm totally with you. I think involving him is absolutely fine until he proves he shouldn't be involved. And so far, he's not done that.
Yeah, and let's think about this. Like speculate. Just I know we love speculation.
It's reckless speculation.
Reckless speculation. How do you think this looks?
Called.
Like, how do you think this looks in application? Like, he's not going to be in the draft room. He's not going to be, holding the stopwatch. Do you think it's just like a conversation? It's like, hey, let's say it's the quarterback position. Like,
yep, I love this.
What do you think we should be looking at? What do you think traits are necessary for a quarterback? What would make, what do you think would bring the best out of you? Like, what kind of relationship you have? I assume it's like that, right?
I think you'd sit down and watch film, right? Like if you're
maybe,
O'Connell,
yeah.
I'd bring him in and say, "What do you think?" Like it's not going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You talking about like college quarterbacks? Like
yes. I'm saying if you're considered drafting a quarterback, you get the cut-ups, right? And and the thing about Jefferson too is, as far as I can tell, he's proven to be a very smart player. So like he knows what he's looking at, he can run a route. So I don't think it'd be unfair to say, Justin, we're going to look at 5 QBs. What do you think? And especially like Chipper, let's say it's a 3rd round guy or a 4th round guy.
Yeah.
A Kellen Mond again. I would hope it'd be an improvement on Kellen Mond. But, if it's a Kellen Mond, my guess is Jefferson might say pretty quickly, yeah, that guy's got something, or don't even waste a pick.
Or hey, you have friends in that program or whatever. What do you know about, this quarterback? What are your, you might have guys that are being represented by, an agent, whatever, what do you hear about this? I mean, I could see some of that, some like background stuff. And then also from a wide receiver's perspective, like, what do you see in this quarterback? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think his ceiling is? What do you think he does well? What do you think, how he would translate to the NFL? And you'd be like, I don't think you're crossing some taboo line by doing that,
Not with the right person, you're not.
No, I think it's smart.
I would actually, not that you're going to find this guy, but I mean, this guy's good friends and played with Joe Burrow. I would pick his brain on Joe Burrow. What made Joe Burrow, what makes him so special? Like there's no overload of information where you're like, well, now I know too much about quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I can't draft one. I don't know what I'm doing. So like, I mean, Justin Jefferson flat out, no success. More importantly, I think he's smart enough to articulate it. A lot of guys can't. So I think what the Vikings are saying makes sense. I find it intriguing because it is a public commitment that I don't think you see teams take. They'll say, Adrian Peterson's a great player. We value him. We love him. But these guys are going the next step, which I think is really intriguing and can't be ignored because it is such a vote of confidence.
And I take them as on the word that they're going to do it. How much do you think it too is part of the negotiation approach to this contract?
I think if you're going to pay him as much as you're going to pay him, you should find as many ways to use both his body and brain as you possibly can. So it's an approach, but I mean, they are flat out giving Jefferson's reps ammunition. Yeah. Because they're basically saying, hey, you're going to build, like you're going to use our guys or our guy in different ways. So, and I have no problem with that, but I mean, this is going to be brought up immediately when they sit down.
Well, yeah. You can't really come back and say, he's not that important to our offense. Right. We can just plug it. But no, I mean, when they say we want him to be the highest paid wide receiver and you've said all these things about him being part of the conversation of personnel, then back it up, So I would think that gets done before training camp, right?
Yes. Started training camp is my guess.
It might be one of those deals that first day of training camp, we got a press conference here and Justin Jefferson is going to talk about
Yep.
We've covered that day many times before, right? Yes. So I could, sometime I could see that happening. So then the Cousins thing, you have to know well in advance of that, right? I mean,
well, I think if the Cousins camp's not going, I think if they're not going to back off what appears to be their ask, I think it's just done. I mean, he can come back if he, there's no rule against him coming back, but I don't think you're going to do an extension that's of significance.
I mean, that's the thing is like, if you get that point, you say, you know what, let's play it out. We'll table it for a year and we'll talk to you throughout the season. And then at the end of the year, we figure out what you want to do.
And you'll be a great Buccaneer.
I could see that, but Judd, these are some big ticket items for a first year GM.
Type of thing a columnist loves.
Oh, you may read it on Sunday, Judd.
Juicy, baby. All right, Chip Scoggins. Talk to you soon.
All right, boys.